All right, folks. Insecure, Season 3, Episode 2, familiar like. I think for this one, I will open up this review, the sketch, with Issa's job at We Got Y'all. We don't ordinarily touch on what Issa does at work, but in this case, we will. Over the last 2 episodes, we find Issa at work and she's still in the doghouse with her boss because of what she did last season with the black principal and not discussing his prejudice with the Hispanic students. Because Issa wanted to have, get perks from the principal and his cooperation, so she didn't say anything, and she told her coworker not to say anything. So we find Issa in the doghouse. And so for the last couple of episodes, Issa has been trying to rebuild the relationship between her and the boss, and also trying to keep her head down, kind of stay out of trouble. So over the last couple of episodes, Issa has noticed that a lot of the schools, the local schools that they service, have been dropping them from their program and employing other people. So last episode and part of this one, Issa has been calling the schools and asking them why they have actually decided not to go with We Got Y'all services. And what has come back is that it is a black and brown school district, which Inglewood is. And the vast majority of the co-workers, the workers and the volunteers that actually come through We Got Y'all are white. And it doesn't reflect the people that they help, in so many words. So Issa also asked about the We Got Y'all symbol, which is a white hand supporting 3 black figures. And so Issa has been subtly trying to get this across to her boss. So finally, it comes to the head where the boss finally takes notice that, okay, we need to do something about it because this is a problem. So they're in a meeting and she's trying to explain why the white hand supporting the 3 black figures is correct or fine because it's her hand and she's white. Even though to the black school districts that she serves, it is partially offensive. Or at least low-key, what they call racist in their eyes. Not saying that's her intent, but in their eyes it is, and she can't see it. And when Issa also explains to her that maybe they should hire or bring in more people of color or black people, the boss actually tries to explain that they do have another person of color, which is a Hispanic girl, but that's basically can pass for white. And Issa looks at her and says, like, yeah, in other words, the obvious is now the boss is kind of opening her eyes. But amongst white folks, this is very, very common because of the system that they're raised in and the environment that they're in that America is that when we think of racism and prejudice, we think of the extreme end. And we don't think of the subtle everyday racism that exists, that's part of the fabric of the United States. And while the director of the program is sincere with helping children and helping poor and underserved children, she is still part of this environment we call the United States and part of the fabric. So the subtle, low-key racism that is built into everybody's psyche, including black people, goes unnoticed. It's like a fish swimming in water. And shout out to Issa Rae and the cast at Insecure. They pointed out that this racism is so subtle because this white lady believes so fully in what she's doing. She can't see the other side. She can't see what the black people are seeing, which is typical because I used to tell my mother, who had white lady friends, that when she got into a disagreement with them and she felt that they were wrong when they obviously were, she couldn't understand why. I always said that they're white. And my mother never knew what that meant, even though me going to white schools most of my life, I knew what it meant. It wasn't that they were mean. It wasn't that they were bad. It wasn't that they were evil. It's that their worldview is white, and you have to account for that. So, moving on. In this episode, we're really Issa and Daniel heavy, because this is the arc that started way, way back with episode 1, season 1, at the very, very beginning, the arc between her and Daniel getting together. Now, in this season, the first episode, we have the friction, the sexual tension, the sexual friction, because Issa has moved into Daniel and sleeping on her couch, while everybody knows that they have history and they have feelings, and Daniel is still, in my estimation, her alpha, for lack of a better term. And it has been, because if you remember the first episode, really the first moments of the episode, when she's on the computer and looking at Facebook, what if I went after what I really wanted? And that has been really the thread that the Insecure series has been built on from the very first episode. So now she's in the house, literally living with what she really wants. But in Insecure fashion, it's getting screwed up, because now that she can have what she really wants, it's a problem. It's an issue, because they're too close. Maybe sometimes the wanting is better than the having. The idea of being with Daniel is better than the actuality of being with Daniel. So it's now not Daniel the idea or Daniel the alpha. Now it's Daniel the man that she has to deal with. His house, his attitudes, his thoughts, his feelings, all the things that she could ignore because she was involved with Lawrence. Now she's living with Daniel. She has to actually confront that, also confront her feelings for him and their relationship. Now she has to build a relationship with Daniel. So the episode opens up with her actually calling Daniel and trying to figure out where he is, because she hasn't seen him for 3 days, because he's been at his girl's house. Because the last episode, he's going out with her. So he's been doing a Lawrence. If you remember last season, Lawrence would spend 3 or 4 days at Tasha's house and then go crash back at his buddy Chad's house on the couch. So basically, this is to give Issa space. Daniel has been doing exactly the same thing with his girl. So the same girl he was smashing, he's now smashing at her place and crashing at her place. So after the 3rd day, you know how it is. Even women will say, even though you're banging them up and blowing out their back, after the 3rd day, now she needs her space. And she politely tells him he needs to go back home and be at his own house. So while this is going on, Issa is trying to figure out how can she either get a place or extend the time that she's with Daniel, or at Daniel's place. So she's been calling Daniel on and off. He hasn't been answering until like the 3rd day. He picks up the phone and answers, and she hasn't gotten a place, and she's struggling to find a place. And so she says, "Can I stay a couple of more weeks?" And Daniel kind of lies and says, "I don't know, Issa. You know, my girl is basically saying that she's not comfortable with you being there." He says, "Maybe I can give you another week." But this is just Daniel blowing smoke. This is him playing games with Issa's mind. So now Issa is scrambling, trying to figure out how can she find a place in a week. So now the broom she could have got with her brother, that's gone because he's giving it to somebody else. So now she's backtracking, trying to do the work that she should have done right when she first moved in. So she needs help. So she goes to Kelly and she says, "Kelly, I need to find a place, and I know we need to know What can you do for me? Because my credit score, which is zilch, is messing me up from getting a place. So Kelly starts looking at her stuff and looking at her folder. And then Kelly says, well, either you need to have a cosigner or you need to have 4 months rent in advance, which is ridiculous in LA. Nobody has that kind of money laying around. At least most people don't have that kind of money laying around. Everybody's seen the clip. Kelly says, you should stay at least a few more weeks with Daniel so you can save up some more money, because it's not looking good and there's no way we can repair your credit quick enough. So Issa kind of looks down and says, well, he says it's kind of uncomfortable for me to be there because of his girl. He said, well, maybe, Kelly says, well, maybe you can kick him out some more money. And Issa kind of says under her breath, embarrassed, that said, well, I'm not really giving him any money. She says, you're not giving him any money? Well, are you a concubine? In other words, are you giving some pussy? And Issa shakes her head. Well, are you cooking? Issa shakes her head. Are you cleaning? Issa shakes her head. Or, well, are you doing anything for him? Issa embarrassingly says she's not doing anything, and basically Daniel has been doing everything for her for free. In other words, she never thought that she had to reciprocate. And that has been Issa's track record for the first 2 seasons. Issa never thinks about the other person. Even when she's trying to do something for the other person, she's trying to get something. She never once thought that to give Daniel any money on the rent, or or buy food or anything else like that. So basically, Kelly is giving her a wake-up call, and Issa gets in the elevator and has to think about this. So we see her call Daniel up and says, I'm going to Costco. Do you need anything? Or paper towels, whatnot? And Daniel's kind of confused, and he says, no, not really. He's good. And then we see Issa trying to clean up the house. So she's scrubbing the house, and she's doing all, how it is. She's cleaning the guy's house, and she's finding little bugs and all this kind of stuff. You know how guys are. It'll be clean, but it won't be woman clean. Now, if you think back to when Issa was with Lawrence did all the cleaning. Lawrence basically did most of the cooking, if not all the cooking. Lawrence basically supported her, but one, because Lawrence really wasn't working as much, and he's working on his app. And 2, Issa was comfortable with Lawrence doing that kind of work. So she was not, I wouldn't say trained, she was not used to doing it. So it never occurred to her to clean. It never occurred to her to cook. It never occurred that she had to reciprocate to a man. And because she was involved with Daniel, she thought that her being there was enough, which is an attitude that a lot of black women have toward their men nowadays. So the next time we see Daniel and Issa together, Daniel is coming home, and basically, because he's been basically booted out of his girl's house, and also he's frustrated because he's come from the studio, and one of his artists that he wants to work with hasn't shown up, has blown him off. So he comes home kind of frustrated, and he walks into his own house, and Issa's basically shocked that he's there because he had been there for 3 days. Like, what are you doing here? And then she goes to the uncomfortable spiel, like, you know how it is. Basically, mi casa is su casa. In other words, my castle is your castle. Well, basically, your castle. In an archetype, I always tell guys that if you let a woman stay for longer than a couple of days, she starts to nest. And Issa has started to nest. When she's cleaning up his house, she's actually cleaned up the house, but she's arranged all the dishes and everything the way that she would arrange them. Just like she's a woman of the house, which is a subtle symbol that basically she sees herself as a woman of the house. So he's troubled. And this is, I was listening to another review, and they pointed out that Issa is starting to show growth in this episode for the first time. She asked what was wrong with Daniel because Daniel looks troubled, and Daniel starts telling her his problems, that he's been blown off by an artist and the artist is going to meet him at the club, but he doesn't really want to go through the club thing to meet an artist that seemingly doesn't want to work with him. He doesn't want to humble himself. And Issa kind of teases him about his, I guess this is where the toxic masculinity is coming in, because he's showing masculine pride and also masculine stubbornness. And she says, you know, if this is what you need to do to make a contact, well, go to the club and do what you have to do. And Daniel makes an excuse that he doesn't want to go by himself. So Issa offers to be his wing girl for the night. Now, if you look back to like Issa and I keep getting them mixed up, Issa and Lawrence's relationship, that was always the role that Lawrence played for her. Lawrence was always not, because they were a couple, it was always Lawrence going to her benefits and out with her friends and into her parties, the ones that she wanted a man on her arm with. It was always him doing it for her and not her doing it for him. You never saw her go to a function with Lawrence. You never saw her doing anything with Lawrence. It was always Lawrence either by himself or with Issa doing something for her as an event for her. This is the first time we ever see Issa actually do something for somebody other than herself, or at the very least Molly or one of her other friends. This is the first time she ever did anything. We see her doing something for her man. A lot of people speculated that she might have done it in her early part of her relationship with Lawrence, but the thing is we haven't seen it. But this is the first time we've seen it. So they go to the club. She's his wing girl, and they're supposed to be on the list to get into the club, but he's not on the list. So he's frustrated because he's pissed because they wanted him to come to the club and meet with the artist that he's supposed to be working with. So they have to stand in line in the club just like everybody else. On their way back to stand in line, another producer that's actually hit that they've actually gone to school with comes walking up and asks them what they're doing and why they're waiting in line, and he offers to let them in. And like so Issa is actually elbowing Daniel to actually, hey, you need to get in. This is your boy. Stop being stubborn and go on in the club with your homies. So Issa is hyping Daniel up and making the connection between her and their classmate. So she's actually, basically, she's doing a support role. She's doing what women should do for their man. So even though technically Daniel is not her man, wink, wink, nod, nod, she's actually doing that. She's actually doing that for him. Now, Daniel is still a little salty about what's going on because he really doesn't want to do this way because his pride is a little wounded. So they get in the club. They make the connect. They talk to their constituents. Little tete-a-tete going on because Issa's at the bar getting drinks and she's basically talking to one guy that's sitting there and he's flirting with her, and Daniel looks over, he doesn't like it, and Daniel's circulating in the room, he's flirting with a couple of girls and Issa doesn't like it. And you can see that tension going on, which is kind of contrived, which is the part of the season I don't like, is that they're going way too far to try to build sexual tension when there's no sexual tension that really exists because they've already slept together. They've already been together. They've already been involved. So trying to build something falsely that doesn't exist is one part I don't like in the episodes going on. But hey, it's a girl series. It's written for women, and everything that women do is not logical. Okay. And this is the point where I think they needed more male writers, because I think the male writers would have kind of shut this particular storyline down. Hey, look, they smashed. They've been smashing. So it shouldn't be that big a deal. If she moved in, of course, the easiest way for her to actually be there and stay there is to do what? Give up a little poontang that you've already given him more than a few times for nothing. So now that you need to get something from him, basically now you don't want to give up a poontang, which makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, they're in the club, they do their thing, and people, all of a sudden the party kind of gets wild, clubs kind of gets wild, and somebody actually lets a couple of rounds go. And instinctively, Daniel covers her, just like a man should for his woman. Pushes her on the ground, and he covers her to protect her, and he ushers her out of the club. And the next scene, we see they're back at Daniel's place, and they're talking about what went on, and they're having a back and forth. And I guess this is a toxic masculinity thing again, where she talks about Daniel's pride. She's telling him that he should take advantage of the connection that he made, even though it's not in the way that he wanted it. He still got done what he needed to get done, and he should push past his ego and go ahead and make that connection and take advantage of the relationship that he has. And so she gives him wise counsel, as a woman should. Daniel takes it and picks up the phone and calls his buddy and arranges a meet where he actually can go to the studio and let him hear some of the work that he's been done to make that connection happen. So Daniel shows appreciation for Issa, and he tells her that she can stay as long as she likes, even though in a previous scene she's actually gotten a hit on one of her apartment hunting escapades, ventures, because she actually applies for an apartment manager at an apartment, and the people handling the apartments actually looks at her resume and says, okay, good, she's college educated and they would love to talk to her. So they're actually interested in actually giving her or letting her have an apartment in exchange for actually managing the apartments that they have. But she doesn't tell Daniel this because now they've made a connection. Now they're probably getting closer. Now she has to make a decision. Does she take the apartment or does she stay with Daniel? So basically the episode ends by Daniel rubbing her back because she says that the couch is hard and her neck is hurting. So he offers his bed because he says he's going to be working late. So he massages her neck, and then after he does that, he gets up and goes to his studio, his home studio. And on cue, Issa, in her supportive role, actually follows him into the studio and actually starts listening to the music with him. So what we're seeing is not only the evolution of her relationship with him, but also her relationship as being a supportive partner as a woman, rather than a spoiled, selfish little girl. But we'll have to see how this relationship unwinds. I would have rather have seen them go into the relationship rather than this sexual tension. I know women like sexual tension, but in the real world, if you've already had sex, there is no sexual tension. The hard part is not getting together. The hard part is staying together. The hard part is letting your guard down and letting the real you out. And the two personalities have to blend together, and the good parts and the bad parts have to come out and have to be dealt with. And I think that would be far more interesting. Maybe they have already written that down and that's coming, but that'd be far more interesting than this rom-com like thing that's going on for the first two episodes. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one.